Started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and now...
That's right. We are live.
The ghost faced himself, Brandon Tanev.
This isn't like the start of last season when it was just, it looked like the Canucks were just a beer league team not playing defense at all. And just before Chris goes, no, I'm Chris, you can actually go now.
no, hold on.
We had to give more time for coming on late. So.
I still, hold on. All right. Chris, go, and then I got something else to say at the end.
So, an elf and a midget in 2 back-to-back games. He's definitely on a friendship tour for sure.
Think, oh yeah, I'm okay with him being, the 6'7" defenseman. No! He is a AHL defenseman right now.
Look, Shonky, don't mind Devin, okay? We all struggle with Devin, so you know.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com, Shifts and Pucks, or subscribe to wherever you get your audio, wherever you are. It is Flames Wednesday, as, of course, we talk Canucks Monday, Flames on Wednesday, and who better to bring on? As I think this is our first guest during the Shifts and Pucks era. Been looking forward to this one for a long time. The color commentator of the Calgary Flames on Fan 960, the one and only Peter Loubardias. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
I am excellent, gentlemen. I just want to start with a little something.
Sure.
Just a little picture here of my son, because as I like to tell people, he looks like a Greek god some days. His dad looks like a damn Greek. So I just wanted to start that way. A little humor. Delighted to be with you guys. Looking forward to it. And outside of showing you a picture of my son, you got to be careful with that name. Although, if your intro is any indication, maybe you don't have to be careful with Shifts and Pucks.
You caught on there with Peter.
Yeah, well, I'm old, but I'm not new, and it's not my first rodeo today, for sure.
Yes, we've a name inspired by someone. Anyway, yes.
I like it. I actually, you know what? It's not easy to come up with names, in this podcast world where it seems like everyone has one. I might be working on one myself and might invite you guys for a little return matchup down the road. But
that'd be amazing.
We'll see how that goes.
Well, fair enough.
The first hard-hitting question I really want to ask you is, how do you smell?
I smell terrific. I look like hell, but I smell good.
It's beautiful. Oh, yeah. I thought I'd start off with a hard-hitting one.
Yeah, that's a big. That's gotten no mileage, by the way, Devin.
0.
They're probably ready for me to go over there, but they're gonna miss some of those things.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
That's funny. That's good. I like that.
That's Devin. That is the master.
I like that.
Yes. Let's start with the Olympics, and let's start with the women, actually, because I'll start with my assessment of everything and just see where everyone else is at. Because you and I chatted over the U18s, and I'm sort of seeing a very similar thing. Not always the best competition, maybe, but I really feel that this has been a very professional, focused effort from this group, from staff on down. The debacle with the Russians and that whole COVID test situation, putting on masks and just going out and saying, well, we'll have to play hockey with masks on, whatever. If you want us to put on a jumpsuit and giraffe and dress up like clowns, that's fine. We'll still play hockey. I just feel like a very clinical, professional effort from the Canadian women's organization so far. I'm not sure how you're feeling about it, but...
Well, the interesting thing, and there's been some criticism again, because in our world, we're so good in Canada at so many sports that, when we actually are better than people, well, that's not good enough either. So we have to be mad because we're actually better than other countries. So I'm going to stop before I get on that rant. Gina Kingsbury, who's the GM, and the fine folks at Hockey Canada, they had to restore some belief, guys, because, okay, we won in Sochi, but, and we lost in a shootout in Korea. But the fact of the matter was, prior to August, they had won every world championship dating back to 2012. So, there had not been a lot of wins for Canada against their arch rival, and what I think, and I get a lot of argument from it, and it's fine. I think it's one of the greatest rivalries in sport, period. I don't care what the gender, what the sport. They rarely let you down. They're the best on the planet. And Kevin, there's no question. They have great leadership. I think there's been a different direction. I think they needed to go younger, and they've done that, especially on defense. In Sarah Fillier, they have, I think, and I don't like to use this term, but I think she's a star in the making. So I'm already looking forward to next Wednesday when I know this. If Canada wants to win the gold medal back, they're going to have to be better than they were in the game that they just won 4-2.
Yeah, 50, you guys jump in here, but 50 shots on goal. That's not going to cut it. I thought a little lethargic, especially in the third, but Larocque on defense, my goodness, what a warrior.
Yeah, her and Renata Fast, and, it's so different when you watch people in person. And I've watched them in the past in person, but to, watch them 4 times at the World Championship this summer, that shutdown pairing for me is as good as any in the world. And we all in this room now, Jocelyn Larocque reminds me of Chris Tanev. And the reason I say that is because she's incredibly selfless. She makes people around her better. She's not going to put up a lot of points, but she's willing to do whatever it will take to help your team win. And I think Renata, who's younger, is just scratching the surface. And she's no fun to play against either. So that's a comparison for you.
The great comparison. That is Chris Tanev is a favorite of this podcast. I'm a Canucks fan. I've watched him basically grow up as a Canuck player, and now seeing him doing the same, being the same as leader and all around just solid defenseman. I love that comparison with Jocelyn Larocque as well, because I think that is absolute perfect. She is someone who is just an absolute rock back there, and someone you can rely on no matter how big the game is, what the situation is. You can throw her out there.
Yeah, to win in sports, you have to be able to stop, or in the case of hockey, check elite level people. And I think it's one of the most underrated things that isn't talked about, but it decides championships and who wins gold medals and who doesn't. And, it's a lot of fun. And the neat thing about those two countries, which isn't always fun for the rest of the world, Canada and the US just keep pushing themselves to a level that makes it so difficult for the other countries, to try and stay with them.
It's sort of like where the juniors were at. There was a elite level, and everybody else was kind of playing catch up. It's the same thing. But I love what you say, because it's really Canada, US continuing to just push themselves to be the best. And I do think that's growing the game. I think, look, it was 6-1 or 6-0 against the Russians, but I didn't think that I thought they worked really hard. You look at that China-Japan game, they fought really hard. I think it is growing the women's game.
Well,
we need a lot more to that. But
yeah, here's what I would say. So I use this comparison, and not even I'm old enough to remember these days, but in the early days of the men's Olympic competition, Canada used to beat other countries sometimes by 24 and 30 goals. So it has taken a long time, and we're still working on it, for other countries to catch up. To the point now, the incredible story that Finland is, and look at what they could have thrown at other countries in this tournament down the middle with Aho and Barkov and Lundell and Rope Hintz. Like, that's pretty good four down the middle, not to mention some of their guys on the back. So, it's going to take more time. It really is. But I also don't miss the fact that you have to go through that process to get to a better place. And until some of the other countries, particularly sometimes Eastern European countries, take it more seriously, and that's probably a different discussion for a different show, we're going to have to wait a little while. But I just, the rest of the tournament, I can't wait for what should be the gold medal game, but there's going to be, when everybody else plays, it's going to be pretty entertaining too.
Devin, I feel like you have something to add.
No, just wind Peter up and let him run and let him talk. It's gold no matter what.
Fair. So speaking of the men, and I know I think we're all heartbroken that it's not the profession. We're not seeing best on best, but what are you looking forward to in this tournament? What should we be watching for? What are you going to be watching for?
Well, even as we do this podcast, there's been 2 games played, and I don't want to date it, but I'll do the best I can. So Denmark has already knocked off Czechia, or the former Czech Republic. First ever appearance in the men's competition. They have a win. The first game in the wee hours of the morning had, the Russian Olympic Committee, which I would say should probably be the favorite of the 12 teams. And they were literally life and death against the Swiss, who, again, have a really good league and good players and lots of veteran international experience. So I would say 2 things, guys, that I'm really looking forward to is some of the young players, certainly Canada's young players. The United States reminds me of the old model that they used to use before the pros came in. Outside of, back prior to 1998, it was college stars, and like Canada, they get together for the year prior to the Olympics. But they're a very young team with some incredibly gifted players that I think are coming to the, National Hockey League, and a couple of free agents. One guy to keep in mind if you're watching is a kid who plays at the University of Minnesota. I've watched 3 or 4 times this year, and his name is Ben Myers. And he's there's a lot of teams really interested in the NHL and his services. So, and number 2, outside of seeing some of the young people, is I'm not sure we will have ever had a more competitive 1 through 12 Olympic men's competition. I only probably think maybe 3 teams that are out of the mix. In my opinion, we'll see how it goes, but I've already seen one big upset. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be really entertaining. And yet I understand why for some people, like I did an interview this morning, and I won't tell you who with, they didn't even know the men's competition had started. And I get it. I love it. It wouldn't matter if they're playing pinochle with 9-year-olds. If they're wearing Canada's jersey, I'm probably going to tune in and pay attention. But yeah, I'm always, whether it's world championships or this kind of an Olympics, I love the game so much, and it's always an opportunity to watch guys that you don't get to see very often that, are coming to the NHL. And I think, I'm sorry, but I heard a great line from a scout recently, and he said, if you don't go or you don't watch, you don't know. And I'm a big proponent of watching in a day and age where, yeah, I know we can go to this and quickly look things up, but that's not cutting it. Anybody can read a chart or a graph. A lot of people in our business, I'm not going to name names, they can tell you what. They can't tell you why. And I still, and maybe I'm too old, maybe the why doesn't matter, but it sure as heck does to me.
This was, I love what you said, because I took a whole bunch of heat. Right back to Chris Tanev here, and Devin O'Shawn will back me up. I put out a tweet that suggested when the whole Jack Eichel controversy or the Jack Eichel trade talk is, one of the players I would not include would be Chris Tanev. And I got so much heat for that. It's like, you would give up anything for Jack Eichel. And I kept my hands away from the keyboard because I'm almost typed out and said, you don't know the game, because you're assuming by graphs that a guy like you win cups with Chris Tanevs. That's the type of guy that you win cups with. You don't trade Chris Tanevs. Sorry, Sean. Or give him up in free agency. Also, sorry, Sean.
Yeah, Sean, that again, it's easy, right, to say that now. And in all sincerity, I think the Canucks have, they've had some, I know that, in the marketplace that they take a lot of heat. I also think the last 2 years, everything that could have gone against them has gone against them. COVID, some departures, and the marketplace in our country, it drives everybody batty, including me. It's not easy in the social media era to be in Canada, and I'm not making excuses for them. They make a lot of money and they live great lives, and I get to see it up close and personal. I don't get to live it, but I kind of get a feel for what it might be like. But nobody will ever convince me that Travis Green isn't a real good coach. And I don't know how we got to Vancouver, but I'll finish, is when they made that run a couple years ago, guess what went way up? Expectations. And then you don't really manage expectations the best. And the other thing you do is you take Markstrom and Tanev out of your room, and unless I'm missing it, and of course in COVID I haven't got a chance, unfortunately, to spend much time with them in person, but these guys care about winning. And including, I think the goalie, they have a great goalie in Vancouver. Thatcher Demko is dynamite. And he's going to be real good for a long time. But guys like Tanev and Markstrom in today's day and age in pro sports, I don't think they grow on trees. And I mentioned it earlier. Tanev is a real selfless guy in a not very selfless world.
Yeah, when that all happened, and looking back, I would say that losing those two out of the locker room really made the Canucks take a step back, and then they're still trying to rebuild after that. And I think specifically Tanev, just because, as you said, they've got Demko and they've got that, but I think Tanev taking him out of that locker room really hurt. But you're also seeing what he's doing in Calgary too. You're seeing the emergence of Oliver Shillington, and does that happen without Chris Tanev?
No, I don't. Well, who has Chris Tanev played with that he hasn't helped make better? Who?
Yeah. No one.
Quinn Hughes? Yeah. Now, again, is he an incredible talent? And was he going to figure it out? Yeah. Did it hurt him last year without having that guy around? Yes. Did it make Noah Hannafin better? Yes. Is it making Oliver Shillington better? Yes. Does it make your whole group of six better when you can rely on that guy who eats pucks, might have as high a pain threshold as there is? And listen, I'm not trying to tell you that he's the elite of the elite. I'm just saying selfless guys are hard to find. There wouldn't be one team in the NHL that wouldn't want to have them. And as you can tell, I'm a pretty big fan.
We're cannibologists here.
Yeah, yes. I always thought all those years in Vancouver, there were two guys that I never thought got enough credit. And I had Vlasic first in terms of a guy who could check the daylights out of elite level people. And I always felt that Chris was like right in the next tier of some of the best defensive defensemen in the Western Conference. Felt that way for a long time. And I have yet to ask a coach that in my travels that does not agree. Not one.
Yeah, the intangibles are there, unquestionable for both those players. And the Calgary Flames would not be the same team without him, period. And
no.
Right? And I guess looking at the Vancouver Canucks as of right now, because there's all those Miller trade rumors as well. And I feel like he's cut of the same ilk, essentially, because he is one of those guys that will go to bat, go to war, do everything he can to make sure he's successful. And I think that they're very similar players.
Yeah, I see some similarities for sure. I think the makeup of who they are as people, I don't think JT suffers from opinion or being somewhat controversial, or, he might lean a little farther right than some others, but that's fine. But he's a gamer. He's always been a good player, and he's having a heck of a year again. I mean, people questioned it when they got him a couple of years ago. Well, I thought he was their best guy in the year that they made the run, period. Best guy, period. Outside of maybe Markstrom would have been right there, very, very close. But it'll be interesting to see, where he goes and where he ends up. I'm going to guess he probably wants to go back to the United States, just a guess.
If he has a choice, for sure.
If he has a choice.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's coming to Calgary.
Yeah, we've discussed it. We don't either.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
What okay, so hypothetically, if you had a package from Calgary to Vancouver, what would it be?
For JT Miller?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. If I'm Vancouver, I want your first. Starts there. And I probably want Juuso Välimäki.
And you think those two would get it done?
Not sure.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, hypothetically, I guess.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right?
What do you guys want? What do you guys want back in return for JT Miller?
The first, it needs to be there. I think Välimäki would be a good third piece. I know you're quite high on him, but he's dangerously close to being another sort of
that's fair, to another Olli Juolevi, for example.
Yeah. Okay, exactly. So I'd be if I was Alvin or Rutherford, I'd be asking for one of the top three prospects, Pelche, Zary, or Coronado.
Yeah.
Yeah, and seeing what you can get there.
Yeah, and I'd be telling you that I'm going to hang up the phone.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
Oh, the cell phone disconnect. I don't know what happened.
Going through a tunnel.
Yeah, and that's exactly where we got to as well. It's just it doesn't make sense. But I want to get back to let's go to Välimäki here.
Mm-hmm.
What is holding him back from being a full-time NHLer at this point?
He hasn't played enough.
Yeah.
He hasn't played enough. And, when Darryl came on board, if you're going to play for Darryl, you're going to have to do it his way. And the one thing about Darryl's philosophy, and he can be pretty hard on young guys. because Daryl believes that the NHL is not where you're supposed to learn. You know, you get better at the NHL level, but you learn somewhere else. But in the case of Yuso, I mean, you know, and I don't feel responsible, but, you know, I've always liked the kid. If you know him as a human, there's nothing not to like. He's respectful. He's passionate. I think he has leadership qualities, but I also think he's his hardest marker, and he's a pretty sensitive, emotional guy. And not that I know anything about sensitive or emotional, but for those types of people, and I just might be one of them, a lot of times the highs are really, really high and the lows are really low. And as a young player with high expectations, you know, he didn't meet them under Daryl. And, you know, we're kind of seeing that with Dylan Dubé, who I thought this year, you know, again, might have a chance to have a breakout year. But under Daryl, you need to do it the right way. And you need to check and you need to show that you can check elite level people before he's as concerned about what you can do with the other. But he has missed so much time. You know, in his last year in Tri-City, he only played 43 games. He virtually missed 2 complete seasons after, you know, being inserted into that 2018-2019 playoff series against Colorado, which is when I got really excited about him, because he came in midway through the series and he didn't skip a beat. And there were a lot of other defensemen in the group that had a miserable time. And he was playing 18 minutes those last 3 games. But those things happen. You know, sometimes in sports and in life, if success comes a little earlier than you're really ready for it, when it goes in the other direction, for these young guys, it's hard. It's really hard. But I still think if he can get healthy and get his confidence back, and it may not happen in Calgary. Because guess what? I don't care what business you're in. You know, you have to have the backing of the most important people. But even in Calgary, I could still see it working, because we're always in this day and age in such a rush with first-round guys that it has to happen today. It doesn't have to happen today. In fact, more guys get messed up. Like, think about Oli Julevi. How might have that situation been, gents, if he spent another year or 2 at home?
Yeah, for sure. I think
now he was already over in North America, you know, but he was better at 17 than he was at 18 or 19. So confidence is something, at least on our shows, I talk about every day. Because when you lose it, and remember, young elite people, most of the time, they haven't heard the word no, or you're not good enough. So when a situation comes along where, hey, everything's rolling along and he's got 9 points as a 17-year-old, wins a gold medal, wins a Memorial Cup, you know, and I love the kid. I got to tell you, I was dead wrong. Not that I'm dead wrong, but it certainly didn't happen the way I thought it might. But I think the marketplace, I think the timing, I think when young people aren't ready, look at Puljujärvi. Did he benefit from going home? Yeah, I interviewed him in Buffalo at the draft. He couldn't. He could barely say hi and hello. He's not ready. And it's more, guys, than just. It's not just about being ready as a hockey player. It's about learning how to be a pro and learning, in those cases, the language and being a long way away from family and friends. And when it goes south, it's hard for those young guys. They're not used to it. You know, and I don't want to be the old guy, but I'm the old guy. The young people of today aren't exactly built for adversity sometimes, because we don't want them to have any. And that's like guys like my fault in my generation.
Yeah.
Devin, tell me you don't see that at the gym all the time.
Yep.
Tell me that.
Definitely see it. For sure.
Yeah. And it's not anybody's fault. It's not a hockey thing. It's a society thing.
Yep.
There's value in hard. And if it starts hard, you appreciate it more. And in a lot of cases, those kids get to a better place. If we don't run them out of town and into a big hole where they can never get out because we need it to happen in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Do you see a potential opportunity for Valimaki to get a chance under Daryl Sutter within the season, barring any injury or without?
Well, he's hurt again.
Yeah.
He's been hurt again. So he needed reps. He needed to go to the American League and play 20, 25 minutes, get his game back, and then give them some options. And with where their team is at right now, which I know you guys are very familiar, well, you know, I don't know how long for Calgary Nikita Zadorov, who I nickname Nikita's World, because you really never know what's coming from night to night. Man, he's a fun guy to watch. You know, Goodbranson's been one of the great stories for them. Penalty killing, he's really solidified things. But are you going back there again next year? So what I'm saying is you're going to have someone like Valimaki or Connor Mackey jump up into those spots. I think that's the inevitability of it, especially if you add, and depending in Calgary what you're going to do with, Gaudreau and how much are you going to pay him and for how long, and you have a Tkachuk situation staring you in the face. Yep. So, again, it's great to have guys that you pay a lot of money, but guess what it does to your depth?
Yeah.
Now, better have young people who can play.
Totally. Now, where do you see this with the trade deadline looming? Where do you see Brad Treliving going? Is he going to go for more defense, or we've talked about on this podcast multiple times? Do you want more center depth or a top six piece?
Well, could you get it all? I mean, I think everybody, every team out there wants another forward, and they want more depth on defense. The one name that keeps coming up is Tyler Toffoli, and he still has term. He's at a pretty good price. I don't think anybody's going to have necessarily interest in Montreal for a couple of years. I think they'll get it. I think they'll get it back. I mean, this year, you want to talk about a year that never had a chance. That's what's happened in Montreal. But there's a connection with Daryl. Daryl values winning probably more than any coach I've ever been around. And the thing about Toffoli is, you guys know, okay, can he score? Yeah. Can he add to your scoring depth? Yes. But for those who have watched him close, don't tell me that this guy hasn't turned into a whale of a two-way player. That on a team that doesn't have, well, at least not for me. They don't have Matthews. They don't have McDavid. To me, they kind of have, even with Johnny, I know he's having an awesome year, and good on him. But I don't see Calgary's big guys necessarily in the same camp that I see some other elite level people in the league. They're probably a step below. So to add another piece who knows how to win, knows exactly what the coach wants, is an excellent player that you can trust and rely on. I think, there's been talk about Giroux and Hurdle and everybody. In some ways, for this group right now, where they're trying to go at this point with the group they have, Toffoli might be as good a fit for them as almost anyone.
My concern with Toffoli, and my concern with a lot of this discussion, is the asking price.
Yeah, for sure.
And I look at it this way. I'm one that believes that the Flames should call up Jacob Pelche. I understand where Daryl's coming from. I understand his philosophy. But between Trevor Lewis and Brett Ritchie, there's a combined 0 goals. if Jacob Pelche got one goal, that's more than, Brett Ritchie and Tyler Perlick. I'm going to leave Trevor Lewis out there because I think Trevor Lewis has been another one of those guys that has been a great find. And I just, one of my concerns is putting Pelche in a package for a guy like a Toffoli. And I'm not sure that contract ages well, but I could see what he brings. But I'm just concerned giving up what you give up for a Tyler Toffoli. That's ultimately.
It's always, see, the hard part I have in assessing this on a day-to-day basis in Calgary is, the hardest thing about sports is having true intellectual honesty about how good your group is. That's really difficult. And when is it time, and when is it kind of truly time? There's only a few teams for me that I look at and I think are truly Stanley Cup contenders. Now, I know every once in a while somebody gets hot from the 8th seed and makes a great run, but they rarely ever win. To me, the cream of the crop was Tampa even before they won. Because when you get to 4, Eastern Conference finals in 6 years, that to me is elite. Boston has had a pretty elite run. Washington, what Vegas has done. Like, I always look at it this way, guys, and you don't always get it this way. Because what happens is teams get in the middle. And when you get in the middle, I wouldn't say you can fool yourself, but when is it time to strike? And then the other thing that people don't talk about enough is, guess what? What does the coach think? What does the general manager think? But what do the guys who pay the bills think? And what do they want? And what does ownership see as success and priority? Because if that mandate is we have got to get into the playoffs, and that's what your boss is saying, and I'm not saying that's exactly what's happened, but a lot of times I don't think teams get over the hump because middle is not a good place to be. Does it give you a chance? Like, for instance, could I see the Flames winning a round or two under the right circumstances? I could. But I couldn't look at you guys in the face and be honest, which I try to be every day, and go, I'm guaranteed that they're even going to make it past one, depending on the opponent. So when do you and when don't you? And what do you give up? And Kevin, further to your point, that's always the hard part for me, because I see it two ways. Until your team starts to have a little success in the playoffs, you don't know anything about winning. So there is value in that. And you kind of need to get there to at least open the door. But if you're just going to put yourself in a continuum state of we might get in or we might not get in, or 1 year we do, 1 year we don't, that's not a good place from my standpoint.
Definitely agree.
It's a hard business. Hard to win, boys.
Especially with, Daryl Sutter came here to win, right? We saw that within preseason. He had 3 separate groups. He had the AHLers out on one ice. They had the NHLers on the other ice, and he had the junior players on the other ice. Like it's very, very apparent that he's here to win now within the next 2 years. So, and how many more chances is Brad Treliving going to get as well, right? So within this trade deadline, you got to be doing something. Or to Kevin's point, and we've talked about this on the podcast as well, as far as like we're concerned, and I'm going to speak for everybody here, why not bring up Jacob Pelche? Put him on your third line. He's good defensively. I guess the biggest question, is he ready for the NHL? No?
I don't think he's ready, guys. And I love him. I don't think he's physically ready. And I think where he is at about 160, 163 pounds. I think, honestly, the best thing for Jacob would be to leave him right where he is so that next year, because if you watch camp, he wasn't close. He wasn't. Sorry. And I love the kid. I'm a massive fan of the kid. But to bring him in, again, I just go back to so many young guys get in trouble because they don't, like, pro experience matters. Even if Jacob spent another year in the American League, I wouldn't have an issue with that. Because the way I look at hockey, whether it's this level, the junior level, when a guy comes in, I want him to be ready, not to learn on the job. Yes, I get that if you look at Brett Ritchie and he doesn't have a goal all season, and I'm glad you kind of went in a different direction, Kevin, on the Trevor Lewis thing, because if you watch Trevor like I do every night, like right now you've got Trevor on one side, Milan on the other side of your one young guy, 22-year-old Adam Ruzicka. You know why? Because he's not necessarily ready either. There's some upside in him. So what do? You make his life easier because you put two really responsible guys on either side. That, to me, is smart hockey.
Yeah,
putting a kid in, and, we see it all the time. Because you know what can be just as dangerous? I'm going to go back to Juuso Välimäki. Sometimes it can actually hurt you to come in and be successful. Look at what Sven Berchi did years ago. Got the emergency call-up from Portland, scored 3 goals in his first 4 games as a 19-year-old. Like, in some ways, that can set kids up because guess what? In our world today, everybody wants to see the young guys, and then they do well, including myself sometimes. I blame myself. Then we anoint them to a different level. They're not ready. Leave them. If you need them, or there's a time later in the season, yeah, I'm all for it. But right now, you're life and death making a playoff spot. So I want Zeri and I want Coronado, and their cupboard's not exactly stocked with high-end forwards. And I'm not even saying that any of those guys for sure are high-end forwards. But you're better off a lot of times to let it marinate. Look at Tampa. Now, different situation. But, this year they bring up Kachuk and Joseph. And, those were world junior, world-class guys. They're 23. Just kind of really getting started. And now they're ready. Didn't hurt the Detroit Red Wings. So, and I'm not saying you in the cap era, don't get me wrong. You can't afford sometimes to go in that direction. But what I'm saying is when you can, I'd rather give a veteran time and get through a year or two, leave those guys to develop, so that when you turn over things, those guys have a way better chance of being successful. But that's just me.
No, and just to clarify, I meant Tyler Pitlick and Trevor Lewis just came out of my brain. But that poor guy. That's been a bit of a disaster for sure. He hasn't been healthy the whole year. Yeah, that's fair. And I do agree with you about marinating, and even Välimäki, I agree with you. Even another year in the American League, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Even Pelche, it's just, I have trouble. My struggle is I don't really want to give up this guy, which he feels like you may have to get one of these top 6.
Yeah.
I just don't necessarily see that as a smart thing.
And I get it. I'm not sure, I'm not going to say it publicly, but I would probably make some decisions, and I'm not, they're good hockey people, and Daryl's about as good a coach as you can find, and I have the utmost respect for Brad. And it's like I said, I know enough, and we've seen what Mr. Aquilini, there's other parts of the story, boys and girls, that we don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
People think those guys can always do things exactly how they want to. I'm here to tell you that's not always the case. And where teams get in trouble is when there isn't enough synergy between ownership, management, and coaching staff. In my way of thinking, until all three of those are philosophically pretty darn close to being on the same page, winning's going to be hard.
So you're saying this isn't fantasy hockey. We can't just trade everybody for everybody.
This is not NHL 22.
Exactly.
Build a team.
Not even religious.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me going on the. I know I'm old. I like real sport. I like real competition. I like to talk about real things, not what you think can happen or our great fantasy wish list. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, totally.
You need dance partners to make trades too, by the way, just in case people don't understand that part.
Yeah. Yeah. On the other end of the Valimaki is Oliver Shillington.
Oh, man alive.
What because he didn't seem to be on Daryl Sutter's page. And all of a sudden, like, people thought he was gone. We all thought he was gone. And now, easily the most improved Flame. And I mean, I think it's more than Chris. Obviously.
No, it's more than that.
It's got to be. It's more than that. What is it? What did he do?
Well, here's my opinion on the whole situation. So, Oliver, to his credit, is a pretty confident guy. And if you go back to his draft year of 2014, about December of that year, there was talk about him going in the top 10 and maybe the top 5 because of his brilliant skating ability. And as you guys know, so I think this happens for young players a lot. They get in, like all of us sometimes in certain situations, they think they're better sometimes, and they get focused on, why am I not getting opportunities that some other people get? And the difference with Oliver, and I'll never forget it, I had a chat with Dominic Pittis, who coached in Stockton, and I asked him one night in San Jose about Oliver, and he said, Peter, Oliver has every skill in the world, but he's got to get to the point where he doesn't skate himself into trouble as often as he uses those great feet to skate himself out of trouble. So he had to become simpler. But I think what he did this summer, and his mindset was in one place. I'm better than some of these other people, and I'm going to give them no choice but to play me. And he just flat out went out and won a job on the left side of the team's blue line that people, starting with the head coach, had real concern about going into the season. And I don't know where they'd be without him. So I really think his mindset about why I'm not getting things, rather than to hell with you all, I'm going to go get it. I'm going to be determined. I'm going to be the best I can. And I'm not making excuses anymore. Control what you can control. And that's my take. And when asked about it, he hasn't quite been that straight up about it, but not far away either. I give him all the credit in the world. They would not be where they are without his ability to round out their top 4. He's had a heck of a year, guys. He really has.
Yeah.
Sean, Devin, did you have a question?
Don't want to keep you too much longer. You've had a hell of a marathon of a the past, I don't know, 24 hours. But I do want to.
I'll get to bed eventually. It's all right. I sleep when I'm dead. Yeah.
There you go. What do you think about Johnny Gaudreau for Hart, for the Hart Trophy? And I guess to piggyback off of that as well, Tkachuk or Lindholm for the Selke? Because I've heard all of those arguments. I'm kind of curious on your thoughts.
Johnny's had a whale of a year. I take nothing away from him. He's back to being him. He's having fun playing the game. Again, hockey for him is a lot of fun, and it wasn't very much fun the last couple of years, and it was hard for him. We've talked about it on the show. It's hard for people who are used to being successful when for the first time in their career, they can't do what they used to do. So I always say this in life, if you want different, you have to do different. And he's done some different. But the one guy in Calgary, Johnny would be in the conversation. He wouldn't be at the top of the list for me personally. But I think he's having his best year ever as a Calgary Flame and in the NHL.
Yep.
The guy who does not get enough credit in Calgary outside of the marketplace and even inside the marketplace is Elias Lindholm. Elias Lindholm is truly one of the smartest, most responsible hockey players I've ever watched on a day-to-day basis in my career. He glues everything together. And what he is, and every guy who plays defense and goal on this team will tell you, he is a dream for those guys. He's never in the wrong spot. And what it does for players who, and I know Johnny's plus 30, but let's not kid anybody. Johnny's never going to win a world checking award, which is fine. That's not what he's there to do. But my point is, Elias gives those two guys the freedom to go about their business the way they want to go about it. And to Johnny's credit, Johnny's been way better this year without the puck. Because what guys forget sometimes, and I can't even imagine what it's like sometimes as a coach, the message that offensive players take a long time to understand is the better I am without it, the more I'm going to have it. And the more I have it, the more I can get done. And last year, Johnny in his own zone was a tire fire at times. A lot of long shifts when he and others were on the ice. Not anymore. Elias Lindholm deserves every Selke consideration for me. I think he might be the most underrated player in the NHL.
I don't disagree.
He's a guy that I'd be willing to sign long-term, right, it says 52, 53 on that screen. Before it gets to 53 minutes, I'm ready to sign him long-term. And for good dough.
That's a bargain. That was a bargain of a deal that they've got Lindholm.
Oh, that guy at less than 5 for what he does?
Yeah.
It's almost on par for this team when John Tavares was making 5. Not quite to that extent, but I'm telling you guys, not far away. This guy's like Patrice Bergeron. He really is. Probably going to end up with 70 points. He's plus 29. You use him in every situation. He might score close to 30. And when games are on the line, I want him out there all the time.
Absolutely.
So if you like winning and guys who can help you win, you might like Elias Lindholm.
The one criticism I do have from him is I want him to shoot more because his shot is so underrated. And when he gets it off, oh my God. It's a game changer. And I mean, like the one thing out of like the million things that he does in a game-to-game basis. But that is one thing that I wish he would do more.
And you know what, Devin? I think he would. There's some nights he does a lot of heavy lifting and puts in the other thing people don't realize, when you play on both sides of special teams, and he's the first guy out with Backlund over the boards when it works on the penalty kill, those are hard minutes, fellas, as you know. Those are the hardest minutes that you play. So he's on both sides of special teams. And I think one of the reasons, he doesn't necessarily have the numbers that the other guys have is because his responsibility page is way different. Those other two guys aren't killing penalties. They're picking up some apples on the power play, but to their credit, Johnny Gaudreau barely has any power play points. But Lindholm, you're right. The one thing about Elias, and I'll never forget this, Rod Brindamore talking about him a couple years ago in Carolina, who said, I don't know how this guy doesn't score 30 every year. When Elias Lindholm, and he's getting there, when he truly realizes how good he is, there might be even another level for this guy.
I could see him wearing a smaller C on a chest one day.
Yeah. Me too.
To me, I feel like we're keeping you here, but to me, Lindholm and Backlund have been some of the most underappreciated Flames in the Flames market. I don't even know if that Backlund has been truly appreciated for what he's brought to this team and the organization. Because every time people want to say, let's move Backlund down a line or two, and I know that you're not like one of those that do that. When Backlund's on, this team is harder to play against. And when Lindholm and Backlund is a combination, it's that they're tough to play against.
Yeah, they are. Well, you know what? Michael's had a tough year.
Yeah.
He only has 6 goals. But I say this, I bet I've said this literally 1,000 times in the last 7 years. When Michael Backlund's two-way game is at a high level, the Calgary Flames don't lose a lot of games. Now, this year, it hasn't been at that level enough. But I'm not sure there's a more key guy going down the stretch than Michael. And the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's starting to really get there.
Yeah.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, in that 18-19 season, he was an absolute monster and an absolute huge reason why Tkachuk had such a big season and why the Flames had such a big season.
So true, Sean. It really is. And Matthew loved playing with him. Matthew absolutely loved playing with him. Michael at times in his career, he's become a new father of 2. I will say this, and they're sure as hell not interested in hanging with me, but Michael Backlund is one guy that I just, as a person, the respect I have for him, he is class through and through. And he's a guy that I'd actually consider spending time with outside of a hockey setting. And I don't say that about all that many guys, but I do about him.
Fair. Yeah. Well, sir, I know you have other things to do, including getting ready for the 40 games in 81 days, including a big one tonight with the Vegas Golden Knights, and then a big one tomorrow with Devin's jersey on his lap there.
Those guys are pretty good.
They're pretty good.
They're okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, if you like 30 and 10, 31 and 10, they're okay.
Exactly.
No, they might want to win a playoff series one of these years. That would help. But they're pretty good. They're pretty good, those guys.
Yeah, they got a gauntlet to go through when they make the playoffs. But I'm really I'm hoping to make that game tomorrow. I guess it is tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Well, I hope you can too, because they're especially when the building can be full. It's always, when Montreal comes and Toronto comes, are usually my 2 favorite games of the year.
Yeah. Well, thank you for spending some time with us.
Hey, glad to meet the 2 of you. Continued success with your show. And anytime you need a loud Greek who's not afraid to talk, I don't charge a lot, But I am going to come looking for you guys at some point to return the favor. So
absolutely, I love it. We'll be right on there.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, be well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Mr. Loubardias, that was a lot of fun.
Fucking love that guy.
Was a hell of a lot of fun.
That was great.
I had so many more questions in the bank, but I'm just like, this guy needs to sleep. For those of you who don't know, listening, he has been up since yesterday morning. He has not gone to sleep. He watched the Olympics all night. He's been on the morning show. Right before he was on with us, he was on with Will Nault on 960 as well. So this guy's a machine.
Yeah.
Nice.
He committed to 45, and we were at an hour, and I wanted to go on. I'm like, no, I got to take some charge. We got to shut it down.
We didn't even get a chance to ask him about just calling games off monitors and everything that's gone through with that and the broadcast. And I would love to be able to pick his brain, just hear more thoughts from Peter, especially about that. But we got some gems today.
Yeah. The pod clips will come out.
The one person we didn't even talk about that I really wanted to get in with is Mangiapane. We didn't even say one word about Andrew Mangiapane, let alone Markstrom. Like, oh my god,
yeah.
We got a little bit in there with Markstrom, but yeah, not much. It just like he's one of those guys you could have a 3-hour podcast with, and it'd be fantastic.
Yeah,
all three.
Tyler might be messaging in a private chat. We're too long, but actually, Tyler would be in on that for a long time.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah,
and we've got some breaking news now.
Breaking news, and I was wrong. This is what they are going with.
Well, we've got Slurpee on here helping us out here, but yeah, Martin St. Louis is now the Habs interim head coach. After they fired Ducharme earlier today.
Before we go on, do we want to do the Pig and Duke now? Let's get that advertisement out of the way, and then we'll keep going.
All right. So yeah, we have partnered with the Pig and Duke pubs here in Calgary, and are part of their Pig and Puck Club. They have 2 locations. You can go to join the Pig and Puck Club. The downtown location at 503 4th Ave Southwest, and the neighborhood pub at 1312 12th Ave Southwest. Members of the Pig and Puck Club get game day specials when they go and watch Canucks and Flames games at either location. Members are also able to enter a draw for tickets to the April 23rd game at the Saddle Dome between the Flames and Canucks. The Shifts and Pucks podcast we have 2 tickets to give away as part of the Pig and Puck Club. And you can enter our draws for them by retweeting any of our episodes or pod clips, and we'll be definitely posting at least a couple from today's episode with Peter Loubardias. And you can also DM us the word of the week on Twitter or Facebook. Any retweet will get you 1 entry, and a DM of the word of the week will gain you 3 entries. This week's word of the week is gold, to celebrate Max Perrot's gold medal performance in the snowboard slope style. And we want to thank Stephen and Joe and everyone at the Pig and Duke for supporting the podcast.
Yep. So do that. Do all those things. Do we want to touch on Montreal, or is there any other Flame stuff that we want to get into here?
I don't have anything. I think, just having Pete on was enough.
Fair enough.
And that's really hard to say coming from the Flames honk that I am. So
like you said, he was just I was enjoying every single second of that.
Yeah.
I remember when this past summer when Tyler came out and visited, and he was podcasting from the same table, and he was complaining about me shaking the table. Peter had a few table shaking slams of the fists and arm movements. It was great.
Yeah.
It's zero passion.
Zero. Yeah. And he's a good-looking Greek guy that Michael Backlund would like to spend time with. Come on. Okay, let's touch on the news of the day. Dominic Ducharme is out as Montreal Canadiens coach. Martin St. Louis is named the interim head coach. My belief always was that Jeff Gordon was secretly teaching David Quinn French lessons. Maybe David Quinn does not quite know enough French to pick this position, and that's why they went with Martin St. Louis, because it's interim head coach. But this is a situation, I think, maybe to build on something that Peter said. This was a situation, they got to the Cup final. They overassessed all of the things that they thought that they were. And they had a lot of situations like Carey Price situation, Shea Weber. I really feel like Dominic Ducharme as a coach was probably in a no-win situation, first of all. I just don't think the Canadiens were like... And I think roster structure-wise, I think you have to look back, and as much as getting a Tyler Toffoli, getting a Josh Anderson, bringing in a Mike Hoffman, and some of these moves that they made, I think have hampered the Habs. I think that this is the other lesson of window and stuff, which I think often can be examined. But I think Ducharme was absolutely in a no-win situation.
Show me a good goaltender, and I'll show you a good coach, is the old adage. And when you lose Carey Price, a world-class goaltender, let alone you lose a number one defenseman in Shea Weber. Yeah, this season was going to be a real tough one for them no matter what. And it's one of those seasons that looks like everything's gone wrong. And going back to what Peter Loubardias was talking about in terms of not rushing a player and waiting till they're physically and mature and physically mature and mentally mature to make the NHL. Maybe that's a bit of an issue with everything that Cole Caulfield's gone through this year. He came in and lit the world on fire. Like we had Kevin, you and others were talking about the way the Canucks would rue the day that they drafted Vasily Podkolzin over Cole Caulfield.
Did I ever say it that way? Did I ever word it that specific way?
Yeah. If you didn't, I'll rewrite history. Okay.
Okay. Apparently, Sean's revisionist history here.
You know what's
right.
funny about that is that Sean is very particular in the way that you say things and the way that he's being so cavalier with the way that he's rewriting history. It's amazing.
Okay. Let me reword it. Kevin and others questioned if the Canucks would should have drafted Caulfield over Podkolzin, and now Podkolzin hasn't lit the world on fire, but he still looks solid. And Caulfield's been up and down in the AHL and NHL and hasn't really taken that next step that we all thought he could and should. But yeah, I honestly think that it's. When you, let alone like they're without Jake Allen now too.
Yeah,
like they're starting goaltenders Samuel Montembeault or Caden Primo. Like I look at that and I think you are right, Kev, in terms of I think they did overestimate what they had. I think that's kind of similar to what happened with in terms of maybe. Not necessarily maybe the Canucks as well going into that, but I think you're onto something there, Kev, with maybe overestimating what they had, and then committing to it with not only the Josh Anderson making that Josh Anderson trade, but I think that Josh Anderson trade is still good, considering even though that contract's the issue. But it's the Gallagher extension. It's the signing Mike Hoffman for $4.5 million.
I'm sorry to interrupt you here. After everything that Peter said about Elias Lindholm, Mike Hoffman and Elias Lindholm make the same amount of money. Go on.
Yep. let alone even. I honestly think that Jeff Petrie contract is something that maybe they're going to be not happy with if they can't move on from him, because there is rumors that he might be on the move. He might be looking out, because he's 34. He's still playing really well, but how long is that going to continue on for? Right, that's a huge question mark. Nick Suzuki's still looks good, but it's when you don't have a number one defenseman and you don't have a true number one goalie, it's going to be tough to win.
Yeah,
it definitely will be. And to your other point there, Kev, roster construction, Marc Bergevin was on the hot seat for what felt like 2 years. They barely got into the bubble through the play-in round series. They beat Pittsburgh in that play-in round. If you go back and look at that, talk about unprecedented. Everybody had Pittsburgh win in 4 or 5 games, and that wasn't the case. There was questions before they went on a bit of a tear last year whether or not Bergevin would be around. And then at the end of the year, he looked amazing. They put Bergevin on a pedestal. So the way that he's constructed and the team really has hindered the organization going forward. And yes, they have a great chance at Shane Wright or getting a top pick within this next draft. But yeah, like Sean just went down the list of long-term contracts that they have for older players that does not look like they will age well.
And let's not forget.
Sorry, just one more. Just that it was truthfully Marc Bergevin trying to save his job for the longest time, and that never bodes well for the organization.
He Peter Chiarelli'd it. He really did. That's what he did.
He Jim Benning'd it.
Yep. And
the fact that Peter Chiarelli is in the talks for Chicago blows my mind. Completely blows it. Like, how the hell is this guy getting another shot? How?
Well, I don't understand, just on a side note, why you would put a tweet out that you've interviewed Peter Chiarelli. What are you?
Oh my God.
Like I would keep that quiet. Gosh.
I would. Why would you even I know you have to, turn over every rock, make sure that you do your due diligence in every single way that you can. But holy shit, are you kidding me? Anyways, yeah, it's Peter Chiarelli rabbit hole. But hey, from an outsider's perspective, if Chiarelli does become the next GM of the Chicago Blackhawks, I'm getting my popcorn out and I'm waiting for him to make the stupidest moves. And he's going to do a 1-for-1 deal with Patrick Kane. And not even get like prospects or anything like that. He's just going to do 1-for-1. Where's Griffin Reinhart? Can we trade for him?
Yeah, Alex. I would be immediately calling about Alex DeBrincat. That would be my first call.
Oh, for sure.
He's no, that's DeBrincat. He's not a
Kirby Doc.
Yeah, Kirby Doc. Yeah.
Oh, God.
The other thing with the Montreal too is the disaster of last year taking Logan Mailloux as your first round pick, which I still wonder. I think that the Canadians may have to end up renouncing that pick. And, you had that whole Jesperi Kotkaniemi disaster that happened. And, maybe ultimately Kotkaniemi for Dvorak does not look like a great trade. And I'm not saying that Kotkaniemi is the be all end all of necessarily anything, but that didn't really work out. Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton, Martin St. Louis, and the Canadians gang have a lot of work to do.
What do you expect Martin St. Louis to kind of instill within this locker room as of right now?
Leg day.
Leg day, and you got to expect him to do a work ethic thing. I unless there was another team calling about Martin St. Louis, I have no idea why they make this change now. It doesn't make it to me. It doesn't make any sense. How is this going to benefit your team going forward, other than mentally?
I think it's all mental. It's all trying to make sure that it's work ethic. It's maybe bring a little bit of fun into it. Like Ducharme seems like a very fiery, maybe sort of drill sergeant type coach to me. Like I may be completely off base, but just based off of what I've seen during games and all that, he seemed I don't think you could continue on, honestly, with that. How many goals did they allow in the past few games? They lost 7-1 their last game last night. to the Devils. Like it's, I think it was just to a point where they got to a point of no return. It was the same thing. It's very similar to what happened in Vancouver with Travis Green. You had to move on. The players weren't playing for the coach.
Yeah.
And I think Kent Hughes saw that. And this is a very much an interim tag right now. So I think they'll see how things go at the end for this season, for the rest of this season, and then make that decision. So Kevin, maybe they just needed another 6 to 8 months of French lessons for David Quinn. Maybe this is all that is. But I think it just, on this thing, it's just got to a point where they realized that the players weren't playing for Ducharme anymore, and they had to go. But they've kept the whole assistant and the assistant coaching staff intact. So Alex Burrows is still there. Luke Richardson is still there. So that, I think that's a little bit interesting, but you're plucking Martin St. Louis from the Pee-wee coach ranks, because that's what he was doing before this. He was coaching his kids' Pee-wee team to the NHL. So it's a very, very interesting and move. But I bet Martin St. Louis is one of those guys that has had that will and learned how to play the game in a very tough era too for a small player. So I wouldn't be surprised if he can turn into a really good coach.
To answer your question, Sean, for the past 5 games, they let in 33 goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was, Jay Fresh Hockey was talking about this is one of the worst teams in National Hockey League history. Like, they are on that trajectory right now.
Yeah. That's saying something, considering where Buffalo was at a few years ago and Arizona is now. Oh, man. Yeah, that's not a good sign.
And I'm going to pull out my older man card here and just say that the Montreal Canadiens being one of the worst teams in history is a sin. It is a hockey sin. The Montreal Canadiens have always been from the top the elite of the elite. Like, they are the holy grail. There should not be the worst of anything. That is an embarrassment. That should not be happening.
Yeah, it's a crying shame. It really is.
It absolutely, Then
There's some more breaking news now too. Also on the coaching front.
What's that?
The St. Louis Blues has signed Craig Berube to a 3-year contract extension.
3 years.
Well, hey, that Blues team. I would assume, Peter, I would have the St. Louis Blues in my Stanley Cup contender list. The way they're developing players, the one concern I have is what happens in goal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Binnington and Husso, but they have set themselves up so well. They've drafted really well. They don't, what's amazing is they don't seem to miss Alex Pietrangelo. Like, everyone thought, Alex, that's going to be a big loss. And I don't think they've truly missed him. I mean, they would be better with him. But another guy that's a bit underrated, Colton Perrinko. He could be on my team anytime. I've always loved Colton Perrinko. Love the way that they're drafting. Gloria. I'm not going to sing ever again.
Don't go Blues, Kevin. It never goes. Don't go Blues.
We went Blues. But that is the biggest question mark in the Blues is, Kev, you said it. The goaltending. Fun little fact, if everybody who doesn't know what kind of happened and why Binnington got the chance and he went on his massive run from when St. Louis won the Cup. Jordan Binnington was backing up Ville Husso in the AHL and then got super hot. And so having this little bit of transition does not surprise me that Husso has been taking the ball and running with it as of right now. And I don't think that Jordan Binnington will be the number 1 goalie when or if the St. Louis Blues get in the playoffs. It'll be on the back of Ville Husso.
I think I agree with you there, Dev. I think it would be a Huso that's going to be. Although I think they'll. I think it just depends on if Bennington can find a way to at least scrape and claw back to where he was, because he was pretty good to start the season. It's just he's been not good enough lately, or Huso's just been flat out better of late. So
Huso's been better for sure. But even going into the last year, Bennington wasn't like he was getting wins, but his save percentage was down.
Yeah, he's really he hasn't been able to get back to that top end that he was during the cup run. I think he's someone who needs to play with be under his bonnet, a chip on his shoulder, and be that asshole that we all know he is at times, right?
Hextall-esque.
Yeah, very Hextall-esque, I think, yeah.
Well, that's a good transition, speaking of Hextall-ish, because Brad Marchand, this is a very well. First of all, there's two videos that went around, because the first one is in the second period, he's got the puck and he's just going to toss it. He was going to toss it to a fan. Marchand takes it like a 4-year-old kid, and then Jari and him have a conversation. Marchand hides behind the ref, and then later in the game, Marchand belts Jari in the face and then hits him with a stick. It's easy for all of us. He's such a hateable guy. He's one of those guys. Remember that shootout that he went in and he completely fanned on the shot and everybody on Twitter just applauded. He's so frustrating, and he's got enough of a way to talk his way out of stuff like this that he makes it easier for everybody else, him to get away with some of this stuff. But man, I'm gonna put my older cap on here. If that was Ron Hextall and he pulled that shit on Ron Hextall, he would be wearing some sort of ankle brace for a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah, Billy Smith, Ron Hextall, they would have taken them to town.
Mike Smith
might have taken him to town too.
Markstrom
might have taken. Yeah, there would have been a few goalies that would have said like,
it is such. It is such a shame. I mean, it's good to have villains within the game, but especially like when first of all, why the hell would you? Obviously, something happened earlier in the game. Why the hell would you deprive a kid from getting a puck from an NHL game? You know what I mean? That's first of all, that's such a dick move. And then if you want to punch him or slap him in the face, whatever he did, there was contact to the head at the end of the game. I don't know. It's just like it's so childish. It's completely and utterly childish. I'm kind of here for it a little bit, but at the same time, this isn't the first time he's suspended this year. This is the second time, most likely, and it's just it goes with the whole mantra of Boston and what they have been pests, and it sucks because he's such a goddamn good player. If he wasn't, it'd be Sean Avery-esque type of antics, and we would have no time for it. But the fact that he is such a world-class player, he's got a good bag of tricks. That's for sure.
Yep.
It's just. I don't know. At some point, you just have to just shake your head and move on and hope that they continue to punish him more and more every time he does stupid shit like this.
Is Marchand a Hall of Famer?
No.
I'm on the side of I'm on the side of maybe yes.
I mean, the fact that they only won one cup hurts him. It's not like he was on like a dynasty where they seem to just throw everyone from that dynasty on there.
It's two gold medals, right? Or does he have 3?
2.
Is it 2?
No, was he on 2000? I don't think he was on 2010. Was he on 2010?
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
You
It
sure?
would have been 4. Yeah, I think it's just 14.
14. He was on 14. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking up hockey reference right now.
I don't. He probably. Let's put it this way: the way the NHL and the Hockey Hall of Fame vote players in, he probably gets in.
I don't vote him in.
For me, he's right on like how good he can be. I think he gets there, and I'm just gonna bring up Devin's favorite Gene guy with a comment. If Bergeron is, so is Marchand. No, I'm gonna say Bergeron's on another level. He's won how many Selke trophies? He's a top, like one of the best two-way forward defensive forwards that we've seen in the game. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. The thing with Marchand is I think you look at it and I go, I think he probably gets in, but he wouldn't be in mine. But I'm also someone where I think that you need to have a more of a quote unquote small haul. I don't think you need to be handing in. You need to be giving, making players Hall of Famers who maybe didn't change the game. And I don't think Marchand has. Bergeron has. Chara has. We're gonna throw in like 2 players who on that from the Bruins and their heyday that deserve to be in. But I don't. For me, I think he probably does get in, but I wouldn't have him in mind.
Yeah, he's teetering, and yes, you guys are right. He was only in the 2014. For some reason, I thought that he was a part of the 2010, but yeah, it's a good debate, that's for sure. I think he gets in though.
Yeah, I think he gets in, but I would, it's like Kevin Lowe for me. I think he's a guy that they want in, but I personally wouldn't have Kevin Lowe in. But that's,
yeah.
The other thing that happened last night is there was Tuesday night is NXT on the Sportsnet, and then you could also watch, though, if you weren't interested in NXT and you still wanted some wrestling content, you could go to the Minnesota Wild Winnipeg Jets game because Marcus Foligno acted like a professional wrestler and got into a fight and and delivered a little bit of one of those knee stomps. Except in wrestling, you're not really supposed to really stomp on the guy. Marcus Foligno actually stomped on the guy. And as much as I'm making jokes about all of this has to be a double-digit suspension, in my opinion. That was crap. Like with Marchand, he'll probably, I would say 5 to 7, but Foligno, that should be more. That is one of those, no matter what the excuse was, if someone threw a water bottle at somebody, you just don't. That's crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean that's such a bad spot to be. I don't. There's no room for that at all whatsoever within the game. Like if you want to get back at him, wait till your next shift. Give him a heavy hit. Make sure he remembers who you are. And those are 2 big boys going at it. So obviously, it goes both ways. But yeah, it's. I'm with you, Kev. It has to be at least 10, at least.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where he probably just blacked out, saw red, and lost control. But you can't have that. That can't be in the he did, and he has to pay the consequences for that. And I agree. I think it should be around 10 games. I'll believe it when I see. I'll believe it when I see it that they do go double digits on this one. But I think it should be.
Now, just to build on Jean for Jean-Guy, the other question I wanted to ask, and just because we were talking about St. Louis, this just popped in my head. do we see Connor Hellebuyck in a different jersey before the trade deadline?
No.
And well, it's a tough contract to move because that's 6.6 for 3 years. For another 3 years. And you'd have to give up a hell of a. I would think from Winnipeg, you'd have to give up a hell of a lot. But
I disagree with that being a tough contract to move. He is a top. He's when he's at the top of his game, and he's not that far removed from that. And I don't think this is his fault type deal. That's a contract you go after. If you're in a 2 to 3 year window and you're not certain on your goaltending, you go after him for sure. Like I don't think that's but if you're Winnipeg, you're not moving him. Not even close. That I don't think that should be even like you talk about like players that you want to have as like not like that aren't movable. Like you talk about with the Canucks that they're saying that the untouchables are PD, Hughes, and Horvat and Demko. If you're Winnipeg, I would say it would be Perfetti, Ehlers, Conor, and Hellebuyck. Everyone else, I think you could. I think you can make an argument to move on from, but I think he's part of the untouchable list in Winnipeg.
Depends on who's coming back. I'm with Sean though. I think that getting a team like Peter Loubardias said, you need 2 dance partners. Getting a team to bite on them, it wouldn't be that hard, but it's one of those times where it's like, okay, well, where's your team going? Obviously, they're struggling this year. They're not going to make the playoffs. And I mean, in my mind, they're not. And if you're looking at moving people, it's going to be an Andrew Kopp. It's going to be an Adam Lowry. Maybe a Brendan Dillon, maybe a DeMello. I just don't. I don't see any of those top end players. Even I would even say, I would even look at Wheeler to be on that trading block. But he has 2 years left after this year at 8.25. Yeah. So, and he's 35 years old. So, yeah, as far as Hellebuyck goes, yeah, you keep him unless there is a significant piece coming back.
And yeah, unless someone's willing to completely overpay. But I just have him on the untouchable list.
I'm only saying because I know that there was some talk that the Oilers were making an inquiry.
Of course they were.
Well, they
were going to offer a 3rd round pick for him because Holland doesn't want to give up anything.
Well done, Edmonton. You spent a good $2.1 million on Evander Kane with no cap move, and clearly, Mike Smith was outstanding last night against the Vegas Golden Knights. It's a good move. Good move. You're on your way. Anyway, sorry, Graham. I had to chop it in. I one of the dumbest signings of the year. If the Evander Kane signing, dumb. Anyway,
well, I mean, to that point, it's surprising enough, I'm gonna come to the defense of the Edmonton Oilers, because when a player like that, a 30-goal scorer who is grit, who, yes, he is a problem in the locker room, yes, he has a personality, and yes, he has a lot of baggage, but if a player like that comes at that cap hit, it's hard not to jump on him. It's just in the opposite direction of what the Oilers need to do, which is defense and goaltenders. So yes, in that aspect, yes, they made a stupid decision. But when a guy like that has that cap hit and can make that much of a difference on the ice, it's hard to go away from that.
I don't think he makes that much of a difference on the ice, and I think no, I don't. I think he's legitimately overrated. I have never been a guy that has been sold on what Evander Kane can bring on the ice. I think there are times that Evander Kane can bring things on the ice. I think that there's talent with Evander Kane, but it's never been consistent, ever been truly a consistent thing. And when you are that strapped with the cap and you're spending $2.1 million when you clearly need defense and goaltending, I just think it's a poor decision.
I think
consistency is there.
The idea of what Vander Kane can be is better than the actual reality. He's had, we're looking at here, 7 seasons where he's had more than 20 goals or more. So I think there is some consistency, but I don't think they brought him in because it was just a free spin at the wheel, even though they paid a lot for that spin. And I agree with you. I think when you've got defense that needs work, you need you need to be able to rely on your goaltending. I don't think it's the right. It's not the right. It wasn't the right time or fit.
Yeah. But I have a couple of other things. Is there anything else we want to talk to you about before we jump into? I want to address Dylan's question, and then I got one more other thing I do want to make sure that we do talk about. But is there anything else we do want to talk about?
Good.
Okay, so let's address Dylan's question, and then I'll save the sappy stuff for after. Let me find it. Okay, D said choose the franchise brothers, Jack and Quinn or Matthew or Brady. I'm sorry, I can't pull this. We have other chats on here, but that's basically Dylan's question. Jack Hughes, there we go. Jack or Quinn or Matthew or Brady?
I think you go with Jack and Quinn because then you've got your number one center and your number one defenseman locked up, while you, as good as Brady and Matthew are, we have talked about how getting the number one center and the number one defenseman are two very important positions to fill.
I go Matthew and Brady. I think that as of right now, I think that Matthew and Brady Tkachuk are better overall than Jack and Quinn Hughes. But Sean's argument is very valid because, yeah, you do need a number one center and a number one defenseman to build around. But man, having those two as a dynamic duo on your in your top six, if not on the same line, that's scary.
I love Matthew. I love Brady, but I would have to go Jack and Quinn. Just they're younger, and it's a center and a defenseman. That's just too hard for me to pass up. But
I don't think people realize how good Jack Hughes is as well.
Oh, he's amazing. He just needs to be on a better team.
Healthy.
We have other breaking news while we're at it.
Oh my God.
Everything.
Tuukka Rask has announced his retirement. And I'm not really surprised. He had a tough time. Bruce Cassidy said he didn't even describe his injury as an upper or lower body injury. He described it as an age injury. He's called it a career. This is a guy, for Bruins fans, I think that this is a guy that did not get the respect he truly deserved in Boston. He didn't win the cup as a starter. He was the backup to Tim Thomas, but he still provided a tremendous career and tremendous longevity in Boston. And the whole crap around him having to leave the bubble because of his family and the way that he was treated about that was inexcusable to me. And he's deserved. He absolutely deserves respect for sure.
Yeah, it would have been amazing to have him as a Toronto Maple Leaf for as long as he was a Boston Bruin. That would have been nice.
Yes, he was in the Phil Kessel deal. That's right, wasn't he?
No. It was Justin Pogge.
Yeah.
Oh.
Tuukka Rask.
Yeah.
They got the Leafs got to watch Justin Pogge be the backstopping that juggernaut of a World Junior team in 2004 and or 5. I can't remember which one it was.
4.
It's too long ago. But they saw that and got they wanted him instead of Tuukka. But I just want to go back to that last question though, and go back to what we first started talking about with Peter Loubardias, the Olympics. We could have had all 4 of them on the ice at the same time. You could have had Jack Hughes centering the Kachucks with Quinn Hughes on the point with insert another defenseman, Zach Werenski type deal, or
Seth Jones. Yeah.
Seth Jones. You could have.
It's a fucking crying shame that did not happen. McDavid, Crosby. Like
you could have. Yeah, you could have had McKinnon, McDavid on the same line. Could you imagine how fast that line would have been?
Barzal.
And Barzal, potentially, yeah. He hasn't had a great season, but jeez.
When you surround him with players like that.
I want when we go back to St. Louis, too, like Jordan Kyrou, he won the fastest skater. Like,
yep.
Friday night, 9 o'clock Mountain, 8 o'clock Pacific, you've got Canada versus the U.S., and that could have been one hell of a matchup. It already will be because you still have Owen Power and Mason McTavish going up against you'll have Matty Beignets and co on the States, but what could have been? Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Dylan taking shots at the Leafs for trading away potential shots at potential franchise goaltenders. Still some more with them trading away the pick that the Ducks used to get John Gibson. I think that was that the Gardner trade?
No, wasn't that the Freddie Anderson trade?
No, it wasn't Freddie Anderson because Gibson was in the league at that point.
That's why they traded Freddie Anderson.
Man,
because they had they had Hiller, they had Anderson, and they had Gibson coming up. I believe is why they ended up trading him.
Second round pick, 11, or what was that? 2011 was that draft. Drafted in the second round, 39th overall. I'm trying to look for it. It was a first round pick, Tyler Biggs. First round pick, Rickard Rakell and John Gibson.
Anderson was traded by the Ducks to the Leafs for the 30th overall pick, which was Sam Steele, and a second round pick, which was Maxime Comtois.
And man, the Leafs handed them the picks and the Ducks used all of them really well. Like Sam Steele is an NHL player. Max Comtois, I still think he's got another gear to go. Gibson's turned out. Rakell's turned out. Wow.
And Calgary once again being the bridesmaid in that Freddie Anderson trade. He was close to coming here.
And that's that's a trade tree, a couple trade trees that Dangle needs to do.
I want to try doing those trade trees because Dangle's good at them.
Yeah, that Gardner one I think would be a really interesting one to look at, as well as that Freddie Anderson one.
Couple of, as Dylan says, thanks Leafs, which will be here tomorrow. A couple of other things. Just want to give a quick shout out to Clay. He first friend of the show, Clay Emo. I know he's Canucks Clay, but his wife is going through a medical difficulty here. He messaged it on Twitter, so I do want to just say our thoughts are with him and his family. Never an easy thing going through a cancer scare. So although it's Flames talk, we've talked other things, and we'll give a shout out there to Clay. And today is the 1 year anniversary. And I remember, I will never forget where I was, because I was in the BCIT studio down the street from where I live. 9 o'clock, the Twitter exploded when the 1040 went to music. And then 9:30, you had the time of your life. And it was the end of TSN 1040 here in Vancouver, and TSN radio in Winnipeg, by the way. And Hamilton. Let's not forget that as well. And man, that was just a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking day. We did do a podcast, a live pod that when we were named the hockey podcast, I did post that out as for today. But yeah, I'm glad to see some have come back on their feet. Others wish the best, but that was a very tough day in the industry and a very poor way of handling it. So,
yeah, the media landscape is ever changing, always quote unquote evolving. But I think what we've learned over the past year is that I think it's time we need to get some more grassroots programs going where you have companies that are committed to providing local content or just content period that and not just being counters. And I think that's unfortunately what happened there. And it sucks. I live in Calgary, but I listen to TSN 1040 a lot. I was actually listening to Halford and Bruff when that happened, and all of a sudden it was like, yeah, they started playing Time of Your Life by Green Day.
Yeah.
And then done. And I was like, what's going on? Like there was nothing. All of a sudden there was just like, ugh, it was horrible. But yeah, like most of the on-air talent has landed elsewhere or started up things on their own too, which is the evolution of media, the media game, whether it's sports or otherwise. And others have gone on, but it shook things up and it took away opportunities for people like Kevin, who's getting into the game and others. So it just sucked.
Yeah. It's really too bad. I mean, unfortunately, radio is a dying breed, and it was a hard day for a lot of people. That's for sure.
I wouldn't say radio is a dying breed. I say it's a lot where newspapers were and are right now, and as well as it's trying to figure out what it's going to evolve into. And I think you're seeing it's not as much the tune in on your morning shows and your evening shows and all that. That's kind of going away, especially on sports channels and news channels and all that. I think it's going to be it's going to look a lot different, but it's still going to be there.
Okay, well, yes, I wouldn't say radio is going away, but I'm saying it's changing and evolving. It's not going to be the same than what we thought it was or it has been.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave it there. We are not. What?
One more thing.
Absolutely.
Within that Ricard Raquel trade, I was looking it up. A guy who I played against and played with for a little bit got traded. A part of that Ricard Raquel trade. So Joe Colburn got traded from Boston to Toronto, along with a first and a second for Thomas Caberlet. And Ricard Raquel was a part of that that number one draft pick, which is kind of cool. So Dylan comes full circle.
By the way, I gotta listen, but Jeff Merrick interviewed Bill Waters about a couple of potential Thomas Caberlet trades that fell through. I have to listen to some of it, re-listen to it, because I think there was a pretty significant offer that someone turned down. And apparently Quebec in 84 offered a really big package to get the number one overall pick for Mario Lemieux.
That is a book that needs to be written. Someone needs to go through and talk to all these former GMs or even current GMs that aren't just all former, because I'm pretty sure current ones won't want to do anything too much. But to the stories of the trades that never happened and the offers that in Vancouver Canucks lore, the Canucks were this close to getting Gretzky in a trade. They were that real close, but then it was Pocklington wanting money, not players, that ended up sending him to LA. Let alone when they nearly got him in as a free agent too. It's the the moves that could have happened that didn't for whatever reason, that someone needs to write that book or create a podcast on that. Like, that would be amazing.
I feel like Jeff Merrick would be right on board with that. That'd be something
right?
he would love to do.
So good.
Yeah. If it's not a book, it should be a podcast by Jeff Merrick. I would listen for decades.
The one I've always wondered about is I've always wondered the Eric Lindros trade. Because I know Calgary was very much in that trade. I don't know what the actual offer was, but I remember that if Eric Lindros trade was happening during the social media era, the trades that we would be seeing on Twitter right now for that pick would be insane. That was that was something that would be one I would love to look back on, because that's one that hasn't been examined enough. What the offers were, not that because ultimately Quebec got a really good package for it. Don't get me wrong, but what was out there?
Yeah. There's got to be so many, and like, imagine if Jerome got traded a year earlier. Like, there was some speculation with that as well, what that package would have looked like. Oh my god. Oh. We're trying to wrap things up here, aren't we not?
And even the Doug Gilmour trade to Toronto, that ultimately all of the rumors around that were crazy. Like, some of the names that were involved in that, but ultimately Riseborough did what he did. So we can, Anyway, let's leave it.
Yeah.
No, Go ahead.
We'll leave it there.
Okay.
No, we'll leave it there.
Okay. We are not back on Monday. Monday is Valentine's Day. There's people here that are coupled up and want to spend time with their significant others. I'm single, but we'll be back on Tuesday to talk Canucks. We'll be back then. We'll have our news packs Thursday, Friday. But how do we follow everyone?
I am Beardy Canuck 03 on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter at Gordhouse09.
Tyler TNOBLE. Hope you're doing all right. Chris Schneids SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVOLE. Shifts and Pucks on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch as well. And subscribe wherever you get your audio. If Peter Loubardias likes our name is okay. Thanks, Peter, for coming on. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.